how I sabotaged the wedding of the woman who fired me, and justice was served. I never thought my life would unravel so quickly. A moment's grace wasn't just a business, it was my mother's legacy, stitched together with petals, ribbons, and whispered promises of beauty. After she passed, I poured my heart into every wedding, every bouquet, every detail. I believed talent and dedication would speak for themselves. But life has a way of testing your faith in people, especially family. My stepsister, Jocelyn, approached me that morning with her usual dazzling smile. "Sasha, I want to help you. I know an investor who could expand your business beyond your dreams." She leaned in, conspiratorial, and I, naive and desperate, shared my latest ideas, my secret concepts, unpublished and untainted. I remember the sparkle in her eyes. Something that should have been encouragement felt like a warning I didn't recognize. And yet, I wanted to believe her. After all, we shared the same father, the same childhood memories, even if his affection always seemed reserved for her ambition over my passion. I handed her my ideas like a gift, not knowing I was giving her the keys to destroy me. Weeks passed and I felt a strange unease. I noticed whispers when I spoke to clients, calls went unanswered. Then, one evening, my father beamed with pride over the phone. "Jocelyn got the Sterling Vance wedding. Isn't her vision incredible?" I froze. Every detail he described, the floral arrangements, the ceremony concept, the color palette was mine. Every innovation I dreamed, sketched, and nurtured had been stolen, paraded as her genius. "She has a gift," my father gushed, oblivious to my crumbling world. I wanted to scream, to throw plates, to tell him the truth, but I couldn't. I had no proof, and besides, my voice felt small against the weight of his admiration for Jocelyn. And worse, she smiled at me later that day, full of faux sympathy. "I'm so sorry, Sasha. I know how hard you worked." Her words were poison, each one coating the dagger she had planted in my back. My heart ached, not just for my stolen dream, but for the betrayal that carried her signature charm, her calculated warmth. I realized then, my life as I knew it was over. Clients began leaving. One by one, they needed to pause their contracts or decided to try a new direction. Jocelyn's name floated everywhere, praised for her brilliance, while mine dwindled into whispers of doubt. "I thought she was reliable," one client murmured. "I heard, her business is struggling." Struggling? No, it was dead. The cruelest part? Jocelyn orchestrated it with precision. She painted herself as the compassionate savior, offering to take over my clients as a favor. My once thriving business became a cautionary tale whispered in hushed tones at society events. I watched helplessly as A Moment's Grace collapsed under the weight of deceit, my reputation shredded by someone who knew exactly how to use my talent against me. And then, as if the universe had a sense of twisted humor, she smiled and said, "Why don't you come work with me? I could use someone organized like you." My father nodded approvingly. "She's being generous, Sasha. Family should help each other." Generous, huh? I swallowed my pride and my fury, stepping into her lair. Every nerve in me screamed to run, but I stayed because something deep inside me flickered, a plan, quiet, patient, and merciless. I became the perfect employee, attentive, obedient, unassuming. I laughed at her jokes, nodded at her ideas, and let her bask in the spotlight she thought she owned. What she didn't know was that I was learning everything, her shortcuts, her bribes, her secrets, every crack in her perfect facade. I memorized the Sterling Vance wedding plans like scripture, noting every flaw I could exploit. I discovered the florist was temperamental, expensive, and unpredictable. The dress was delicate, a masterpiece of lace and silk. And the groom had a past he couldn't forget. Every piece of the puzzle was mine to manipulate, mine to control. I didn't just accept my role, I weaponized it. Every compliment I offered her, every suggestion I made, subtly pushed her toward disaster. I fed her ego, fed her risk-taking, and let her believe she was untouchable. The thrill of quiet power pulsed through me. By the time the wedding day arrived, I wouldn't be just an assistant. I'd be the hand that pulled the strings, and Jocelyn Jocelyn would never know what hit her. It started small. The florist received a call from me, posing as Jocelyn, berating him for minor mistakes. He stormed off. I replaced him with a cheaper, unreliable substitute. During a dress fitting, I accidentally spilled a drop of red wine on the veil. I offered a quick fix. My trusted contact cleaned it, but I knew the lace would betray her in less than an hour. And the groom, I sent his former fiancé an anonymous invitation, a note hinting at unfinished business. The perfect touch of chaos. Every move was calculated, every action invisible. The wedding was approaching, and I was ready. I stood in the empty hall one night, running my fingers over sketches, timelines, and contracts. I whispered to myself, "This is for every moment they made me feel small, every stolen idea, every patronizing smile." I wasn't just planning a wedding anymore. I was planning justice. And the world would watch. I watched Jocelyn parade through her office, clipboard in hand, barking orders, smiling as if she owned the world. She didn't see me as a threat, just a quiet shadow, a helper, a cog in her gilded machine. Perfect. I began planting small cracks. The cheap replacement florist delivered arrangements that smelled faintly of rot under the sun. I moved them strategically, ensuring every centerpiece caught the light in the worst possible way. Guests would notice, and whispers would begin. At the bridal fitting, I watched the delicate lace veil. Just 1 hour, I reminded myself. That's all I needed. Timing was everything. I brushed past her. "Oh, Jocelyn, you'll be so proud. Everything is ready for the big reveal." She beamed, oblivious that her perfection was a facade I was about to shred. Even the groom wasn't safe. I had sent his past back into his life. A subtle note, a reminder, a spark that would ignite at just the right moment. I wasn't cruel, I was meticulous. Every detail was a thread, and I was weaving a web that would entangle her completely. She thought she had the power. I knew the truth. The power had always been in my hands. The countdown to the wedding had begun, and so had the unraveling. I perfected my invisibility. Jocelyn trusted me completely, leaving me alone with her secrets, her suppliers, her contracts. I smiled at her jokes, fetched her coffee, and whispered praise that only fueled her arrogance. Behind the smiles, I documented everything. Every cost-cutting shortcut, every bribe. Every fragile detail she overlooked. I knew the florist's temper, the dress's fragility, and even the groom's buried emotions. All pieces, all waiting. The staff began to see me differently, not as a threat, but as indispensable. "We couldn't do this without Sasha," they murmured, and I let them believe it. I walked through the empty ceremony hall, tracing my fingers along the archway. A small, almost invisible device nestled in its curve. Later, Jocelyn would scream without realizing I controlled every word broadcast to the audience. I slept little, dreaming of chaos clothed in silk and flowers. The world outside didn't matter. My life had been stolen, but my plan was alive. My mother's memory, my father's ignorance, Jocelyn's arrogance, they all converged in this moment, unseen but inevitable. I was patient, I was quiet, and when the time came, everything she loved would crumble beautifully. Every supplier I contacted, every conversation I had, was a performance. I called myself Jocelyn, feigning annoyance at minor imperfections, pushing vendors to break or make mistakes. The veil was treated, the flowers strategically placed, the groom reminded of a love he never let go. Each piece seemed harmless, small ripples in a calm lake, but I knew the storm was coming. Jocelyn bragged to me about the grand vision she had, unaware it was my blueprint she had stolen. I nodded, smiling, encouraging her excesses. Every risk she took made her closer to falling. At night, I walked the empty hallways, imagining the wedding. The veil tearing, the flowers wilting, the groom frozen in shock. I allowed myself a grim smile. Justice would come wrapped in petals and silk, and the world would witness it. My heart ached not for them, but for myself, the girl who had been crushed, overlooked, dismissed. This was for every stolen dream, every belittled moment, every sigh in silence. The countdown to the wedding day ticked louder in my mind. Seconds, minutes, hours, until the perfect implosion. I had learned how to move people without them knowing it. Jocelyn believed she controlled everything, but I had orchestrated every detail. Vendors obeyed my subtle commands, guests unknowingly set in place, even the groom manipulated by a whisper of memory. I wasn't reckless, I was surgical. Every action was precise. The flowers would wilt when the sun hit, the veil would fray when the bride reached the aisle, and the groom's hesitation would be absolute. Jocelyn's arrogance blinded her. She repeated my ideas as her own, praising herself in front of clients, and every misstep I had prepared would reflect solely on her. The web was tight, ready to snap. Walking past her office, I smiled sweetly. "Everything's perfect," I said. She beamed back, unaware that her empire rested on threads I controlled. The thrill was intoxicating, not cruelty, but justice long delayed. I remembered my mother's lessons about patience, about timing, about the beauty in precise execution. I was ready. All that remained was the final act. The wedding would be her stage, and I would be the invisible hand turning it into chaos. The night before the wedding, the hall was quiet. I walked among the arrangements, the arches, the tables, every detail checked, every plan in place. Tomorrow, the world would see the truth. Jocelyn left early, exhausted from her own hubris. She thought she had everything under control. I stayed, ensuring every tiny flaw would reveal itself at the exact right moment. The veil rested safely in its box, treated to disintegrate with precise timing. Flowers positioned for maximum drama. The microphone hidden, ready to betray secrets. And the groom, unknowingly dancing with history, would falter at the exact cue. I touched the sketches one last time, whispering to my mother's memory, "This is for you, for all the times I was dismissed, for every stolen moment. Justice comes tomorrow." I felt a shiver, not of fear, but anticipation. The culmination of months of planning, heartbreak, and stolen dreams was within reach. When the sun rose, so would chaos, and Jocelyn, for all her brilliance, would crumble under the weight of her own arrogance. The morning air smelled of roses and sunlight, yet beneath it, I felt an electric tension. Today was the day I had been waiting for, the culmination of months of planning, heartbreak, and meticulous revenge. Every minute detail of Jocelyn's perfect wedding was under my control, and I walked among the preparations with a calm I didn't feel on the inside. Staff scurried about, placing flowers, adjusting chairs, checking lighting. I smiled at each of them, giving quiet instructions that seemed innocent but nudged the day toward catastrophe. Every centerpiece, every arch, every bouquet, precariously perfect. Jocelyn arrived, radiant in her arrogance, already boasting to the caterers and photographers. I greeted her warmly, feeding her ego, while knowing her perfection was about to unravel. She had no idea that the delicate lace veil, treated to disintegrate, rested safely in my hands, ticking like a time bomb. I checked the microphone, hidden in the archway. Every whisper, every panic-stricken word she spoke could be broadcast to the crowd with one flick of a switch. The guests arrived, dazzling in gowns and tuxedos. The Sterling Vance wedding, a spectacle of wealth and opulence, was about to become a spectacle of humiliation. As the first whispers of the day began, I whispered to myself, "It's finally time. Watch perfection fall." The ceremony began. Music played, smiles sparkled, and Jocelyn glowed as she watched the bride glide down the aisle. I stood at the back, heart hammering, eyes fixed on the veil. As the bride approached the arch, the treated lace began to fray imperceptibly. Tiny threads floated into the sunlight like dust, unnoticed at first, but the subtle unraveling sent a ripple of tension through the audience. A whisper here, a puzzled glance there. Jocelyn's confident stride faltered slightly as she noticed the first signs of imperfection. She whispered to her assistant, unaware that I controlled the hidden microphone capturing every desperate word. I smiled faintly, hiding in plain sight. This was just the beginning. Every petal of the wilting flowers, every unraveling thread of the veil, and the groom's impending hesitation was carefully timed. I felt a thrill, Not cruelty, but the satisfaction of long overdue justice. Jocelyn's arrogance, her theft, her manipulation, it was all about to come crashing down around her, and I had front row control. The first crack had formed, subtle yet deadly. The audience's eyes flickered, noticing something amiss, and I whispered under my breath, "Let's see her crumble." The sun rose higher, baking the floral arrangements Jocelyn had proudly ordered. Cheap, sun-sensitive blooms began to wilt, petals drooping and discoloring in minutes. A sweet, sickly odor filled the air, unnoticed by Jocelyn, but subtly noticed by the first guests. I lingered near the back, pretending to adjust lighting while observing the reactions. Gasps, whispers, and sideways glances spread among the crowd. The illusion of perfection shattered like glass in slow motion. Jocelyn paced, clipboard clutched tightly, still trying to maintain control. Every command she gave was frantic, yet ineffective. The flowers drooped, the veil's threads fluttered. She was powerless, and I was the calm conductor of her unraveling symphony. The bride clutched her bouquet, unease flickering in her eyes. The groom adjusted his cufflinks nervously, sensing the tension. It wouldn't be long before his old flame appeared, just as I had orchestrated. I exhaled softly, savoring the meticulous perfection of my sabotage. Each element of my plan had worked flawlessly so far. And in the back of my mind, I knew the moment of ultimate revelation was approaching, the one that would shatter Jocelyn completely, in front of the father who had once ignored me. A hush fell over the ceremony as the groom hesitated mid-vow. My heart pounded. I scanned the crowd and spotted her, Charles Vance's former fiancé, quietly standing at the back, eyes locked on him. He froze, every word caught in his throat. Jocelyn screamed instructions, frantically waving her hands, desperate to control a moment that had already slipped from her grasp. I leaned against the wall, calm as a shadow. The veil fluttered in the breeze, threads unraveling further. The flowers drooped grotesquely. Every element of her perfection was crumbling, meticulously engineered, beautifully executed, and utterly humiliating. The guests murmured, sensing disaster. I saw the father's face, Arthur, stiff and shocked as he observed the chaos. Finally, he saw it, the truth he had ignored for so long. Jocelyn's eyes darted around, panicked, unaware that everything she feared, the loss of control, the public embarrassment, was orchestrated by the very person she had dismissed, the daughter she had humiliated. I smiled quietly. This was justice, delivered with precision. And then it came, the moment I had waited for. Jocelyn, frantic and desperate, leaned into the archway, barking at her assistant. Every whispered command, every plea for control, every admission of fear, all broadcast through the hidden microphone to the entire audience. The words spilled out. "Fix this. I don't care how much it costs, just make him say yes. This wedding is my ticket. My father will finally see I'm better than his pathetic, talentless daughter." Silence fell. Arthur's face went pale. The crowd gasped. Jocelyn's empire, built on arrogance and deceit, was exposed in one instant. I allowed myself a single, quiet smile. Months of planning, heartbreak, and stolen dreams had led to this. I hadn't just sabotaged a wedding, I had revealed the truth in a way that no one could ignore. The wedding was over, Jocelyn's public humiliation complete, and as I watched the chaos unfold, I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. Justice had been served. The air was thick with disbelief. Guests whispered, phones clicked, cameras captured every second of Jocelyn's meltdown. I remained in the background, letting the chaos unfold. My heart still raced, but there was calm in my chest, a deep satisfaction. Arthur sat in stunned silence, eyes fixed on the scene. For years, he had overlooked my talent, my dedication, blinded by Jocelyn's manipulations. Now he finally saw her for who she truly was. Jocelyn's face was crimson, her carefully constructed image crumbling. She had no words left, only frantic gestures and stammers. The once pristine wedding, her masterpiece, had imploded in minutes. I watched as the bride and groom processed the shock. Relief mixed with confusion on their faces, but I knew the truth. They now understood they had been pawns in Jocelyn's ambition. The florist, the caterers, even the hidden vendors I had quietly contacted, began to step forward. Testimonies, whispers, small confessions of her deceit spread through the crowd like wildfire. And me, I slipped away quietly, letting the storm rage, knowing my work here was done. For the first time in years, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Jocelyn had finally been exposed. Within days, the fallout reached the courts. The Sterling and Vance families filed suits for fraud and emotional distress. Videos of Jocelyn's meltdown went viral, each replay a dagger into her reputation. I watched from my small apartment, coffee in hand, feeling a mix of vindication and relief. My role in the chaos remained a secret, but I didn't need recognition. Seeing her empire crumble was reward enough. Arthur called, his voice shaky, hesitant. "Sasha, I didn't see it. I was blind. Can we talk?" I hesitated, remembering the years of cold dismissals, the betrayal, the pain. But something in me softened. I could choose rage, or I could reclaim my own life. I replied carefully, "Yes, we can talk, but I'm not the same girl who once begged for your approval." Meanwhile, Jocelyn's company, the Gilded Cage, was hemorrhaging clients. Her investors pulled out. The high society circle, once dazzled by her, now whispered warnings and shared viral clips of her humiliation. Justice, slow and sweet, was unfolding. Arthur arrived at my studio the next week. For the first time, he saw me, not just Jocelyn's shadow, not just a nice little hobby. I owe you an apology," he said, voice trembling. "I let her manipulate me. I ignored your talent, your heart. I was wrong." I studied him, feeling the years of grief and neglect rise to the surface. But I didn't want pity. I wanted acknowledgement, respect, and peace. "I've spent years being invisible, Dad," I replied. "I don't need approval anymore. I've built myself back, but I forgive you, for your sake and mine." His eyes glistened with tears. He finally understood the truth of Jocelyn's betrayal and my quiet resilience. It wasn't a moment of weakness. It was a moment of reclaiming my power. Using the settlement from the intellectual property lawsuit against Jocelyn, I reopened my studio. A moment's grace, reborn. Sunlight poured through wide windows, illuminating the floral arrangements that were now mine in every sense, crafted with love, passion, and precision. Clients arrived, bringing projects that challenged me, inspired me, and reminded me why I had chosen this path. I hired a small, loyal team, people I trusted, who shared my vision. My reputation, tarnished by Jocelyn's lies, was now stronger than ever. Each success became a testament to resilience, talent, and patience. I still thought about the wedding sometimes, the careful orchestration of her downfall. But it no longer fueled anger. It was a reminder of strength. And for the first time in years, I felt the pure joy of creating. Word spread. In the high society circles, tales of Jocelyn's spectacular implosion became legend. Whispers of the talented wedding planner who orchestrated it all began to circulate. I didn't seek fame, but recognition found me. More clients came than I could handle, drawn by my talent, integrity, and the story that inspired awe and envy. I smiled one morning, arranging a sunlit bouquet in my studio. Every petal reminded me of the journey, the betrayal, the heartbreak, and the ultimate triumph. I had not just taken revenge. I had reclaimed my identity, my talent, and my life. And as the city outside hummed with ambition and greed, I finally understood. True power lies not in destruction, but in rising from the ashes, unbroken, unstoppable, and beautifully graceful. The studio smelled of fresh roses, peonies, and sunlight. Every corner reflected hours of careful planning, every detail a tribute to my mother's legacy and my own vision. I had finally built a sanctuary where creativity thrived, where clients felt seen, and where I could breathe freely. The irony wasn't lost on me. I had been forced to swallow pride and work under Jocelyn to survive, yet it had been the very experience that prepared me for this new chapter. Every betrayal had taught me patience, cunning, and resilience. I welcomed a group of high-profile clients that morning. They arrived, unaware of the drama that had catapulted my reputation. All they knew was my talent, my meticulous care, and my unmistakable grace. For the first time in years, I felt truly in control of my business, my life, and my destiny. Each arrangement, each consultation, felt like reclaiming a piece of the future Jocelyn had tried to steal. And I realized something. The best revenge wasn't humiliation. It was living better than she ever could. Arthur began visiting the studio more frequently. His apologies turned into conversations, advice, and even collaboration. Slowly, we rebuilt our father-daughter bond, not based on admiration or favoritism, but on respect and understanding. Clients often asked about my story. I shared fragments, never the full vengeance, but enough to show resilience. People were inspired, and my story began to circulate, a tale of determination and reclaiming what was rightfully mine. Even Jocelyn's shadow lingered, but now it was powerless. She had no influence over me, my reputation, or my heart. Every time her name surfaced in gossip, I smiled silently. I was untouchable. And for the first time, I felt free, not just from her manipulation, but from the years of self-doubt that had weighed me down. The industry noticed. Awards, invitations, collaborations, they came pouring in. A moment's grace became synonymous with innovation, elegance, and impeccable taste. My mother's legacy was alive in every bouquet, every arrangement, every ceremony. People spoke of the wedding that had changed everything, the one where Jocelyn imploded. But I was careful. The legend existed, but I never claimed it publicly. My success was mine, earned without relying on scandal, only talent and perseverance. Even strangers reached out, inspired by my resilience, seeking mentorship or collaboration. I had not just survived. I had become a beacon for those who had been overlooked, underestimated, or betrayed. In quiet moments, I remembered my mother, her hands guiding mine through petals and stems, teaching me to see beauty in the smallest details. Every success I achieved felt like her voice echoing in my heart. I realized revenge had been just a step toward something far greater, reclaiming my identity. I had transformed pain into power, betrayal into wisdom, heartbreak into motivation. Clients became friends, collaborators became family, and the studio, my sanctuary, became a symbol of triumph. I stood at the center of my sunlit studio, arranging a cascade of white lilies. The world outside continued in its chaotic rhythm, ambition and greed churning relentlessly, but I remained untouched, unshaken, unbroken. Jocelyn's empire lay in ruins, her influence gone, and Arthur's eyes now saw me as I always had been, talented, strong, and worthy. I whispered a quiet thanks to my mother and smiled. My revenge was complete, but more importantly, I had reclaimed my life. Every client, every flower, every success was a testament. I had risen from betrayal, and nothing could ever diminish my grace. I was free, I was strong. I was a moment's grace, reborn.